The metallic clang of a distant explosion echoed across the battlefield, sending tremors through the broken earth. Dust kicked up in thick clouds, mixing with the smell of burnt metal and ozone. Wolf, a Delta Force operator with eyes sharp as a hawk's, scanned the horizon. His fingers tightened around the binoculars, eyes narrowing at the sight of an alien vessel descending through the ashen sky. The craft's sleek, angular design glinted under the dim sunlight, casting long shadows over the debris-strewn plains. "Do they ever stop?" Captain Reynolds muttered, voice rough with fatigue. The grizzled commander had seen his share of battles, but this one, against creatures from another galaxy, felt different. There was a finality in the air, as if they were facing something far beyond humanity's grasp. "They don't stop. They get cocky," Wolf replied, lowering the binoculars. His voice was calm, but beneath that calm was the resolve of a man who had fought too long and too hard to let fear creep in. "That's their weakness." The alien ship landed with a hiss, its ramp lowering slowly as armored figures began marching out. Tall, humanoid shapes, their shimmering armor making them appear almost ethereal, as if they belonged to some ancient myth. Yet their weapons, crackling energy rifles strapped to their backs, were all too real. Over their shared comms, a cold, mocking voice crackled through the static. "You primitive humans still resist? Pathetic," the alien commander sneered. His voice was chillingly calm, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around him. "Your kind should have surrendered. But since you won't, this ends today." Reynolds spat onto the dirt. "Arrogant bastards." Wolf remained silent, studying the alien force as they spread out, confident, taking their time. They were here to humiliate, not just destroy. His gut told him as much. "They don't think we're a threat," he said, more to himself than to Reynolds. "They think we'll break." "And what do you think?" Reynolds asked, casting him a sidelong glance. "I think they're dead wrong." Wolf's eyes darted to the makeshift defenses they had set up. Crude barricades, mines buried beneath the surface, snipers in position. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. His team, though small in number, was fierce, and they had survived impossible odds before. But this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about sending a message. He turned to his men, their faces hard but resolute. Some were young, too young, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. Others were battle-hardened like Wolf, their expressions grim but unwavering. "All right, listen up," Wolf began, voice low but firm. "They're coming in cocky. They don't see us as a threat, and that's exactly what we're going to use against them. Hit fast, hit hard, and don't let up. Make them bleed." The men nodded, gripping their weapons tightly. There was no room for hesitation. Wolf motioned to one of his lieutenants. "Get the traps ready. The moment they hit the ridge, we spring it." "Yes, sir." As the alien troops advanced, their confident strides carrying them over the barren landscape, the tension in the air thickened. Every step they took brought them closer to the trap. Wolf watched through his scope, his breathing steady, waiting for the right moment. His heart beat in a slow, practiced rhythm, one he had perfected over years of combat. The alien commander's voice filled the air again. "Why prolong this? Lay down your arms. We will end this quickly for you." Wolf's finger hovered over the trigger. "No," he whispered. A series of explosions ripped through the ground beneath the aliens, sending bodies and debris flying. The carefully laid mines detonated in quick succession, and the alien forces were thrown into disarray. Screams, alien, high-pitched and unnatural, pierced the air as Wolf's team opened fire. Precision shots cut through the smoke, striking their targets with lethal accuracy. The alien soldiers, so sure of their dominance just moments before, scrambled for cover, their arrogance now replaced with confusion and panic. Wolf allowed himself a brief, grim smile. They had expected an easy victory. What they got was a war. "Push them back!" Reynolds roared, charging forward with the men, his rifle blazing. Wolf stayed back, picking off targets with cold precision. His mind remained clear, focused. He knew this wasn't the end. The aliens would regroup, and when they did, they'd come back with a vengeance. This was just the opening move in a much larger game. Amidst the chaos, Wolf's earpiece crackled. "We've got movement to the east," came the voice of one of his snipers. "Another wave incoming, larger this time." Wolf cursed under his breath. They were outnumbered, but he couldn't afford to think about that now. Not yet. "Hold your position," he ordered, already recalculating their next move. They had to keep the pressure on, make the aliens doubt their every step. Victory wasn't just about surviving, it was about making the enemy question their own invincibility. As the dust settled from the initial explosion, Wolf spotted movement, an alien figure, taller than the others, walking through the smoke unharmed. The alien commander. His armor gleamed untouched by the blasts that had decimated his troops. He moved with an eerie grace, as though the battlefield belonged to him alone. Wolf steadied his rifle, locking onto the commander. The alien stopped, as if sensing the crosshairs on him, and turned slowly to face Wolf's position. Even at this distance, their eyes met. The commander smiled, a cold, cruel twist of his lips. "We are not so easily defeated, human." Wolf exhaled, finger tightening on the trigger. "Neither are we." He fired. The bullet tore through the air, straight and true, but before it could reach its target, the commander vanished in a flicker of energy. Wolf blinked, momentarily stunned, but quickly regained his focus. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The battle had just begun. The horizon glowed with an ominous orange hue, cast by the smoldering remnants of the alien assault. The sky, choked with dust and smoke, seemed to press down on Wolf and his team as they regrouped in the relative quiet that followed the first wave. The air was still tense, crackling with the threat of what was to come. "Another wave's inbound," Reynolds muttered, wiping the sweat from his brow. His eyes were locked on the approaching storm clouds, but Wolf knew it wasn't the weather he was worried about. The captain's hand tightened around his rifle. "They won't make the same mistake twice." "They won't need to," Wolf replied, his voice low but resolute. "They're sending more this time. Bigger force. Maybe even better tech." Reynolds glanced at him, brow furrowed. "You got a plan for that?" Wolf didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the terrain before them, the craters, the twisted metal, the scattered remains of the first skirmish. His mind raced, piecing together the battlefield like a puzzle. They had held the line before, but the next attack would be fiercer, more relentless. The aliens would adapt. So would he. "We'll need to split them up," Wolf said, his tone firm. "We can't face them head-on. Set traps, force them into kill zones. Make them fight on our terms." A voice crackled through the comms, cutting through the quiet. "Enemy sighted, sir. Looks like a full battalion moving in. ETA, 20 minutes. Wolf nodded, though his gut clenched at the confirmation. He couldn't show hesitation now. "Tell the snipers to hold their fire until they cross the ridge. We want them deep in our territory before we hit them." He turned to his team, their faces illuminated by the dim, flickering light of the nearby wreckage. Fear was there, etched into every line, but beneath it was something more powerful: resolve. Wolf could see it in their eyes. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to prove something. To themselves. To the aliens. "They're bigger, faster, stronger," Wolf said, addressing the group. "But they don't know this terrain like we do. They don't know how we fight. We bleed them here." The men nodded, their silence charged with grim determination. They had no illusions about what was coming. They would fight until they couldn't anymore. The eerie silence was broken by the distant hum of alien engines. Wolf could hear them now, the low, throbbing sound that signaled the approach of the enemy. The air seemed to vibrate with their arrival, the ground trembling underfoot. He motioned for his men to spread out, taking up their positions along the ravine, behind the hastily constructed barricades and camouflaged sniper nests. In the distance, the alien forces appeared, rows of shimmering armor, their movements in perfect sync. Their confidence was palpable, and for good reason. They outnumbered the human forces 10-1. But Wolf knew that arrogance could be their undoing. Through his scope, Wolf could see the alien commander striding at the front, his posture regal, his expression unreadable. The same commander who had taunted them earlier. Wolf's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just about winning a battle. This was about sending a message. Humanity wasn't going to bow down. The first alien soldier crossed the ridge, his footsteps eerily silent despite the weight of his armor. Wolf held his breath, waiting for the right moment. His finger hovered over the trigger, the seconds ticking by like an eternity. Then click. The explosion rocked the ground, sending the lead alien sprawling. Chaos erupted as more traps detonated in quick succession, throwing the once organized ranks into disarray. Shouts in an alien language filled the air, sharp and guttural, as their ranks scrambled to recover. Wolf's team opened fire, their shots precise, tearing through the confusion. But the aliens recovered quickly, faster than Wolf had anticipated. They regrouped, their weapons igniting with a sharp crackle of energy. Beams of light sliced through the air, melting through rock and steel with terrifying precision. One of Wolf's men went down, his scream cut short as the beam pierced his chest. "Keep moving!" Wolf barked, repositioning to higher ground. His team followed, weaving through the debris, firing as they went. He could see the alien commander in the distance, standing back, watching, calculating. The commander raised his arm, and suddenly, the air shifted. Wolf felt it before he saw it, a low hum, growing louder by the second. His stomach dropped. "Down!" he shouted, diving behind cover as a pulse of energy erupted from the alien ranks. The blast hit the ground with a deafening roar, sending dirt and debris flying into the air. Wolf's ears rang, his vision blurred for a moment before he shook it off. Reynolds crawled up beside him, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "They've got new toys," he muttered grimly, pressing a hand to his wound. "Yeah," Wolf said, pulling himself to his feet. "But toys don't win wars." He glanced over the battlefield, assessing the damage. They had taken out a good portion of the alien forces with the initial traps, but more were pouring in, relentless. His mind raced, calculating their next move. They couldn't keep this up forever. Not with their limited numbers. Not against this kind of firepower. The comms crackled again. "Sir, we've got heavy incoming from the west. Looks like drones." Wolf cursed under his breath. Drones. As if the aliens weren't enough on their own, they had air support now. He needed to adapt, and fast. "All right," Wolf said, gritting his teeth. "We're falling back. Take the high ground, set up defenses, and prep for the drones. We're gonna make them work for every inch." The men moved quickly, retreating to the cliffs where they had more cover. Wolf's mind whirled with possibilities, tactics, strategies. He knew they couldn't win by brute force. They had to outthink the enemy. Use the terrain. Use their wits. As he reached the top of the ridge, he turned back, eyes locking on the alien commander, still standing amidst the chaos, untouched, his expression as cold and calculating as ever. "We'll see how cocky you are when this is over," Wolf muttered under his breath, tightening his grip on his rifle. The hum of approaching drones filled the air, growing louder, more ominous. The final stage of the battle was about to begin. The low hum of alien drones grew deafening as they soared overhead, their sleek forms cutting through the smoky air like silent predators. Wolf's eyes never left them, calculating their speed, their altitude, their likely trajectory. His instincts, honed from years of survival in the harshest combat zones, screamed at him to move fast, to outwit his technologically superior foe. The alien commander had changed tactics. No longer content to let his soldiers advance blindly into human traps, he had deployed these drones, efficient, merciless machines designed to flush out the remaining resistance. "Drones circling east!" a voice crackled through Wolf's comms. He recognized the voice of Davis, one of his most reliable snipers. "Looks like they're setting up for a strike." Wolf gritted his teeth. "Stay sharp, Davis. Hit them before they can see you." He crouched behind the jagged remains of a concrete wall, the harsh wind biting at his face. The broken city they fought to defend was now a maze of rubble and twisted steel, perfect for guerrilla warfare. But even the best cover wouldn't save them from an aerial strike. He had to stay 2 steps ahead of the aliens. Beside him, Captain Reynolds pressed a fresh bandage to his temple, wincing. "We can't hold out much longer like this," he muttered, his voice thick with exhaustion. "They're adapting too fast." Wolf nodded grimly but said nothing. Reynolds wasn't wrong. The alien forces had regrouped, their movements more coordinated, their attacks more precise. The drones were just the latest weapon in a never-ending arsenal. But Wolf wasn't about to roll over. His mind raced, piecing together their next move. If they stayed pinned in their current position, they'd be sitting ducks. The drones would wipe them out in minutes. But if they could lure the drones into the ravine, use the narrow terrain to their advantage, they might stand a chance. "Get ready to move," Wolf ordered, his voice low but firm. "We're not staying here." Reynolds frowned, glancing toward the open sky where the drones circled like vultures. "Move where exactly?" "There's no cover out there." Wolf pointed toward the ridge. "We lead them into the ravine. Force them into a choke point. They'll have to come in low to follow us, and that's when we take them down." Reynolds hesitated, weighing the odds. But he knew better than to question Wolf's instincts in a fight. The Delta operator had a knack for turning desperate situations into opportunities. "All right," Reynolds said, tightening his grip on his rifle. "You lead. We'll follow." Wolf signaled his men with a quick hand gesture, and they began moving silently, staying low to the ground, weaving through the ruins like shadows. The sound of the drones grew louder, their sensors undoubtedly scanning for heat signatures. Wolf's pulse quickened, but his breathing remained steady. The margin for error was razor thin. They reached the edge of the ravine, a deep, narrow crevice that had been carved out by centuries of tectonic shifts. It was a perfect trap. The only question was whether the drones would take the bait. "Davis, what's your status?" Wolf whispered into his comms. "Drones are still circling. They haven't spotted us yet." "Good. On my mark, fire at the lead drone. Make it look like we're pinned down. We need to draw them in." "Copy that." Wolf motioned for his team to take positions along the ridge. Their breathing was shallow, their nerves taut as they waited for the moment of truth. Wolf raised his hand, fingers curled into a fist, then snapped it open. A single shot rang out. The bullet streaked through the air, tearing into the lead drone's hull with a sharp metallic screech. The drone veered wildly, trailing smoke as it spiraled out of control. The others immediately locked onto the source of the shot, their engines flaring as they swooped toward the ravine. Wolf's lips curled into a grim smile. "Got them. Everyone, hold your fire until they're in range," he instructed, eyes fixed on the approaching drones. The machines dipped lower, their sensors sweeping the terrain, unaware of the trap that awaited them. Just a few more seconds. The first drone entered the mouth of the ravine, its sleek form gliding effortlessly between the jagged rocks. Wolf raised his rifle, waiting for the others to follow suit. When the second and third drones entered, he gave the signal. "Now!" A barrage of gunfire erupted from the ridgeline. Wolf's team unleashed a storm of bullets, each shot precise, aimed at the weak spots in the drone's armor. The ravine's narrow walls amplified the sound of the gunfire, making it feel like the very ground was shaking beneath them. 2 drones went down in a hail of bullets, their wreckage crashing into the rock below. But the remaining drones were faster, more agile. They twisted and turned in the air, dodging the gunfire with inhuman precision. One of the drones let out a high-pitched whine, its weapons charging. Wolf barely had time to shout a warning before the blast tore through the air, obliterating a section of the ridge. Debris rained down, forcing the humans to scatter. Wolf hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of him. He coughed, tasting dust and blood in his mouth. His ears rang from the explosion, but he forced himself to focus. There was no time to rest. He looked up just in time to see the last drone hovering directly above him, its weapon systems whirring ominously. Wolf's mind raced. He had no clear shot. His rifle was out of reach. For a split second, he considered his options, and in that moment of desperation, a plan took shape. He grabbed a piece of jagged metal debris lying nearby and hurled it with all his strength. The metal shard sliced through the air, embedding itself in the drone's exposed circuitry. Sparks erupted from the machine as it juddered violently, its systems shorting out. With a final shudder, the drone crashed to the ground, smoking and sparking. Wolf staggered to his feet, breathing heavily, his body aching from the impact. Reynolds approached, eyes wide with disbelief. "Did you just take down a drone with a piece of scrap metal?" Wolf gave a half-smile, wiping the dust from his face. "Adapt and survive." Reynolds let out a breathless chuckle, shaking his head. "You're insane, you know that?" Wolf glanced toward the sky, where the wreckage of the drones lay scattered across the ravine. For the moment, they had won. But he knew better than to celebrate. The alien commander wouldn't let this stand. He'd be coming for them, and when he did, he wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. "This isn't over," Wolf said quietly, his voice steady. "We've hurt them, but they'll be back. And next time, it'll be worse." Reynolds looked at him, the weight of the truth sinking in. "What do we do?" Wolf stared out at the horizon, where the alien forces gathered just beyond their sight. "We keep fighting." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the battlefield, Wolf knew the real battle had yet to begin. The battlefield was eerily silent, a heavy stillness settling over the ruins as the last light of the day began to fade. Wolf stood on the ridge, his breath slow and steady despite the relentless ache in his bones. The ravine below was littered with the wreckage of the alien drones, their metallic carcasses smoking and sparking in the dying embers of the skirmish. But this was only the calm before the storm. "They'll be here soon," Reynolds said, his voice barely above a whisper. He wiped the grime from his face, eyes scanning the darkening horizon. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on him, but he still managed to hold his rifle with steady hands. Wolf didn't respond. He didn't need to. Both men knew what was coming, what had to come. The alien commander wouldn't rest until they were crushed, every last one of them. Their victory over the drones had only delayed the inevitable. "How long do you think we've got?" one of the younger soldiers, Mason, asked nervously. His wide eyes betrayed his fear, his knuckles white as he gripped his weapon. He looked to Wolf for reassurance. Wolf met his gaze. "Not long. But we'll make it count." The rest of the team was scattered along the ridge, weapons at the ready, their faces hardened with resolve. They had fought tooth and nail to get this far. There was no turning back now. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the ground, sending vibrations up Wolf's legs. He narrowed his eyes, focusing on the distant horizon. Dark shapes emerged from the haze, hundreds of them, marching in perfect unison. The alien army had arrived, larger than before, their lines stretching endlessly across the landscape. At their center, the alien commander rode atop a massive war machine, a towering behemoth of alien technology that pulsed with a malevolent red glow. His eyes, cold and calculating, swept over the human defenses with contempt. The commander raised a hand, and the alien ranks halted, their weapons trained on the ridge. Wolf clenched his jaw. This was it. "They're waiting for something," Reynolds muttered, his brow furrowed. "They want to scare us," Wolf replied, his voice calm despite the tension tightening in his chest. "Show us their strength." Reynolds glanced at him. "Is it working?" Wolf's lips twitched into a half-smile. "Not on me." The commander's voice boomed across the battlefield, amplified by the war machine's speakers. "Humans! You have fought bravely, but your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and I will make your end swift. Continue to defy me, and you will know true suffering." The air was thick with the weight of his words, but Wolf didn't flinch. He activated his comms, his voice sharp and clear. "We don't bend." "Not today." The alien commander hesitated for a moment, then laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "So be it." The sky erupted in a blaze of light as the alien forces opened fire. Energy beams tore through the air, lighting up the night like a violent storm. Wolf's team ducked behind cover as the barrage rained down, the heat from the blast searing the air around them. "Return fire!" Wolf barked, popping up from behind the rocks and squeezing off shots. His rifle bucked against his shoulder, each shot precise, aimed at the advancing soldiers below. The humans fought fiercely, using the high ground to their advantage. The alien forces pushed forward, relentless in their assault, but Wolf's men held their ground, refusing to give an inch. Explosions lit up the night, the sounds of battle deafening, drowning out everything but the primal instinct to survive. Wolf moved like a machine, his mind focused, his body reacting without hesitation. He ducked, fired, moved, and fired again, each motion seamless, each shot counted. But even as he fought, he knew they couldn't hold out forever. The alien army was too vast, their technology too powerful. A massive explosion rocked the ridge, and Wolf was thrown to the ground, his vision blurring for a moment. He groaned, pushing himself up, his ears ringing. Through the smoke and chaos, he saw the war machine lumbering closer, its cannon glowing with a fierce red light. "Wolf! We need to fall back!" Reynolds shouted over the din, his voice frantic. "We can't hold them here!" Wolf's mind raced, calculating their options. The war machine would tear through their defenses like paper. If they stayed, they'd be wiped out in minutes. But retreating meant giving up the high ground, and without it, they'd have no chance. Then an idea sparked. "Get the charges!" Wolf yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We're blowing the ridge." Reynolds stared at him, eyes wide. "You're insane!" "Do it!" Wolf barked, scrambling to his feet. He grabbed his comm and relayed the plan to his team. "Set the explosives along the edge of the ravine. When I give the signal, we blow it and take as many of them down with us as we can." The team sprang into action, working quickly to plant the charges as the alien forces advanced. Wolf fired at the approaching soldiers, buying time as they prepared the final stand. The war machine was almost upon them, its red cannon charging for another devastating blast. Wolf's heart raced, but his mind was clear. This was the only way. "Charges are set!" Mason shouted, his hands shaking as he held the detonator. Wolf nodded, his gaze fixed on the war machine. "Wait for my signal." The alien commander stood atop the behemoth, watching them with cold amusement. "You cannot escape, human. Your end is nigh." Wolf's hand tightened around his rifle. "We'll see about that." The war machine's cannon glowed brighter, ready to fire. Wolf glanced at the ravine, the charges in place, the alien army too close to retreat. "Now!" Wolf shouted. Mason slammed his thumb on the detonator. The ridge exploded in a blinding flash of light. The ground beneath the alien forces crumbled, sending soldiers and machines plummeting into the ravine. The war machine let out a deafening roar as it toppled, crashing down in a twisted heap of metal and fire. The alien commander's scream echoed through the air, cut short by the crushing weight of the collapsing earth. Wolf and his team barely had time to scramble back as the ground gave way beneath them. They tumbled down the slope, narrowly avoiding the falling debris. When the dust finally settled, the ravine was silent. The alien army had been buried beneath the rubble, their war machine destroyed. The sky above was dark and still, the battle over. Wolf lay on his back, staring up at the stars. His body ached, his mind numb with exhaustion. But they had done it. They had survived. Reynolds crawled over, panting heavily. "You're insane," he muttered, but there was a grin on his face. Wolf chuckled weakly. "Maybe." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they had accomplished sinking in. Against all odds, they had won. For now. "We'll need to regroup," Wolf said quietly, his voice hoarse. "They'll be back." Reynolds nodded, his expression serious. "And we'll be ready." As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Wolf felt a flicker of hope. They had faced impossible odds and prevailed. And as long as they stood together, humanity would continue to fight.